Welcome. Wow, it's so nice to see a full house. This is great. Wonderful to celebrate the children's hard work. These students have worked extremely hard for the last 8 weeks. Before we begin with our opening remarks, we have a very special guest here tonight that would like to share a few thoughts about the program with you. She was the Freetown Select Woman for many, 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 many years, and now she is on the regional school board, and she also works in Boston, and she heads up that big task force for the rail line. So she's the gal to know. So please welcome Jean Fox.
Thank you, Karen. Thank you for all your hard work, and thank you for sharing your stories with these young people. I was thinking as I was driving over here, first of all, I'm older than dirt. I probably have a lot I could share myself. But then I thought, generation to generation, things change, and they change substantially, and they change critically. But there are some things that don't. They may change a little bit, but you're always going to love that special song. You're always going to love your friends and your family. You're always going to love sand between your toes at the beach. You just won't know what it was like to have to crank your window shut in the car. And life before a microwave. Or a cell phone. I have a landline still. And, things are different, but I still love that special song. I still love that special book, although it's an e-book. I still love watching children grow and develop thanks to the hard work of these two ladies and this nice group over here, and all the work that people do in our communities to see you to adulthood as productive citizens and contributing members of our community. So thank you all, and it's great to be here.
Thank you, Jean. She is one busy lady, so her taking time out to come tonight means a great deal. So I hope you all appreciate her presence, children, because boy, she's a busy woman. So I'm Karen Chase, for those of you who don't know me, and these students are the product of my after-school storytelling program at the George R. Austin Middle School in Freetown, Lakeville. They have been trained as storytellers, initially using folk tales and fairy tales. It's a sneaky way to teach them public speaking skills that they will use all their life. And when you hear them tonight, you will see just how accomplished they are speaking in front of a group. And Andrea and I had this idea 4 years ago, why don't we try to take some of the storytellers and match them up with local senior citizens, bridge the generations, and get their stories. Because as we all know, once someone is gone, their stories are gone. And there is an old African proverb that says, when an elder dies, a library burns down. And Andrea and I both believe that. These students are handpicked. They are students who are committed to storytelling. They love what they do, and some of them have been with us from the very beginning, and now they could probably do the program themselves, I would think. So it's a great honor to work with them and work with the seniors as well. Some of them are new this year, some have been with us from the very beginning, and it's a great, great pleasure to work with my colleague, Andrea Lovett. Andrea, what would you like to say?
Well, ditto. And actually, Karen's too modest. This was her idea in the beginning. Tell them about how this really started.
Well, the idea came to me more than 4 years ago, and it took me a while to really put it into gear. Our son, who is now 32, when he was much younger, he came across a picture in a family photo album. And he said, Mom, who's this? It was this stunning woman, very, Marilyn Monroe-esque, on a car in, shorts and a top and this very lovely look on her face. And I said, that's your grandmother. That's Grandma? He just couldn't put the two together. And I thought, isn't it a shame that children just view us as older. They never understand that we had a life before, that we had a kindergarten, first day of school, that we were a Boy Scout or a Girl Scout, that, we could make the boys smile from across the room. And so that kind of started the idea for me, and here we are.
That's right. Shall we go on with the show?
Absolutely,
Would
absolutely.
you like to introduce the first?
Oh, I
gentleman?
get the first one tonight. I am so excited.
I'm gonna let you do
Yes.
that.
Well, what can I say? Lexi, or Alexandra, Lexi True. She is maybe tiny, but she's extremely mighty, and she is so very mature and confident in herself. This is her third year with the program, correct, Lexi? And she is working with a senior this year who is brand new to the program. So we were delighted to pair them together because we know that Lexi has just the right amount of empathy to work with someone who may be feeling a little out of their league because it's something they've never done before. And so it worked out so well. They really have done a great job on this story together. And she will be telling The Big Red Spoon, Gert Montour's story of a special award that led to a lifelong passion. Please welcome Lexi True. Would you introduce your senior?
This is Gert Montour, and this is her story.
Thank you.
So we're going to start with some questions, and we're going to see who knows the answer. So what footwear company do you think of when you see this swoosh? What beverage company do you think of when you see a smiling mermaid in green and white? What baking company do you think of when you see the big red spoon? To you, Betty Crocker may remind you of brownies and cupcake mix, but she reminds me of something else. First, let's rewind to the 1950s. I was the oldest female of 6 children growing up in the North End of New Bedford. At the time, the North End was primarily a French neighborhood. We spoke French at home, and I didn't even learn English until elementary school. At the time, your neighborhood and ethnicity determined everything. Where you went to school, who your friends were, who you dated and married, all depended on this. But apparently, a classmate at Vogue named David didn't get this memo. During spring break one year, he took 2 buses from the South End that made many stops to come visit me. We were talking, him on the sidewalk and me on the porch, when my father came home. He asked, "Who is this boy, and what is he doing here?" "He's David, from school, and he took 2 buses from the South End to visit me." My father wasn't impressed. "Well, he can take 2 buses back to the South End." Despite things not working out too well with David, I enjoyed my studies at Vogue, which were primarily sewing and cooking. I enjoyed sewing because I was 5 foot 7 inches tall at the age of 13, and sewing allowed me to create my own clothes, so I'd have something in style for a teenager that still fit me well. I also enjoyed cooking, including being part of the team of students who made the lunches at school. During my senior year at Vogue, we learned about a standardized test that all female seniors would be required to take. The test was in conjunction with General Mills, the parent company of Betty Crocker. They promoted homemaking as the most interesting and challenging career for women. Not too long after we took the test, the secretary announced, "One of our students scored the highest in New Bedford on the Betty Crocker test." And to my surprise, it was me. Vogue received a set of encyclopedias for my accomplishment, and I received a Betty Crocker Homemaker of Tomorrow pin and a sense of pride and accomplishment, partly because I scored even higher than the valedictorian. I could have gone to state level to compete for scholarships, but instead decided to go into the workforce. Vogue set me up for a successful career as a seamstress. I made everything from high-end gowns to big brands, to Barbie doll clothes, to my own wedding dress at the age of 19. I also became well-known and praised for my cooking, although sometimes to my dismay. When I heard of a new restaurant I was interested in trying, my husband Joe would say, "Why do we need to go out for dinner? You cook just as well, if not better." Not too long ago, we also learned that our longtime dear neighbor John would make excuses to come over to our house when he smelt something cooking. Tupperware container at the ready, I was always happy to share with him. So next time you see that big red spoon or smell something delicious wafting through the air, remember, we have our own Betty Crocker right here in East Freetown.
So our next two storytellers, we have a tandem pair, Aurora Corbett and Katie Betancourt. I see, I did that without looking, I know. Aurora has been with us for 3 years, and Katie is in her second year, and they have some skills to share. This year they decided when they came that they would tell in tandem. So you have a little bit of story magic as they tell the New York World's Fair, and I'll invite them to come up. And their storyteller, Joe Sylvia. You can introduce Joe.
This is Joe Sylvia. It was the year 1964 and 1965. We had the opportunity to visit this special place. It was the event of the century.
It was the New York's World's Fair.
The previous November, John F. Kennedy was murdered, and the crime is still ongoing. Coincidentally, the World's Fair raised the spirits of the country.
Lucky for me, we had a home movie camera and projector, so I got the privilege of recording our whole experience.
My father would take the role as the director, telling us where to go or what pose to stand in, maybe behind the tree or next to it, and put your hand on your hip. And my mother would always give her opinion. Stand in front of the building, smile bigger.
All the big American companies had pavilions. Each pavilion showed the latest technology from that company. The first pavilion we visited was the Illinois Pavilion. The Illinois Pavilion was more art than technology. The first thing we saw was a marble statue of a man and a woman, made by only the hands of a skilled artist, a hammer, and a chisel.
Next, we saw a Lincoln robot. He was seated in a similar position to how he was seated at the Lincoln Memorial in Washington, D.C. He would stand up with his hands by his side, a plain expression on his face, say a few lines from his seat, and then sit back down. It was eerie, but pretty cool at the same time.
Next, we went to the Hospitality Pavilion. Instead of hearing the buzzing of toaster ovens and dinging of timers, we saw the first ever in modern microwaves.
Due to my growing interest of image making, we visited the RCA for Kodak Pavilion. There, we had the opportunity to see ourselves on a colored television.
I don't like it.
You don't like what? I asked my mother, who was staring daggers at the TV.
The TV, it makes me look bigger.
I assured her that it did not make her look bigger, even though she vowed to never place herself in front of a camera again.
As we exited, we saw the final thing at the World's Fair, the Peace Arches. They had the slogan of the World's Fair, Peace Through Understanding, printed on them.
Underneath, there was a headline of the day. An American ship was attacked by a Vietnamese torpedo boat, and President Johnson had announced that he was going to retaliate. I soon realized that not only did we need technology, but we needed to understand each other if we wanted peace.
Today, I work in an image-making company and realize that the World's Fair has changed my life forever.
Our next storyteller is Karen Poirier. Now, Karen was with me for 2 years in storytelling. He was in 4th grade and 5th grade. He's leaving 5th grade this year, right? Going over to the middle school. But this is his first year in the intergenerational program, and we are so delighted that he said yes to joining us. He is a steady, confident, and mature storyteller, whether he's telling folktales and fairy tales or whether he's telling personal stories. And we knew that he would shine in this program, and we were delighted, as I said, when he said yes, and his parents made the commitment as well, because it's not just them, it's the parents as well. And he is going to be telling the story of a brand-new intergenerational senior this year as well, Wilson Mull, and he is telling From Afraid to Unafraid, the tale of a young man who made a critical decision early in life and found his calling. Please welcome Karen Poria and Wilson Mull.
As a young boy, maybe 1956, my father handed me a couple of boards and a jar of nails. He intended for me to build a treehouse. So I worked on it that whole hot summer trying to overcome my fear of heights. I remember feeling a great sigh of relief as I jumped to the ground after a hard day of work. Looking back, I realized he was preparing me for the family trade. My father's side came from Pennsylvania, where they worked as iron shipbuilders and boiler makers. The other side of my family, my mother's side, came from Maine, where they worked along the coast as commercial fishermen and lighthouse keepers. In the 3rd grade at Freetown Elementary, my teacher asked us what we wanted to be when we grew up. I said Boilermaker, and when asked to explain what a Boilermaker did, I had no idea. I was so embarrassed. I remember having my mom call the teacher because I did not want to go back to school. By 5th or 6th grade, I knew what my profession would be once I graduated high school. At Apponequet, I took wood and metal shops, including mechanical drawing. I succeeded in these industrial arts, but struggled in my other studies. This contained math, history, science. In the range of my 18th birthday, I was planned to go on a fishing trip with my uncles. We were scheduled to board the Sylvia May on a nice warm July day. But after I toured the ship, my senses told me it wasn't the best idea. Without any further thoughts, I jumped ship, literally, before the ship could get out to sea. Fishing just wasn't for me. About a month later, when it finally came to my 18th birthday, I could start my new welding job in Sandwich. Since the company I applied for was in desperate need for certified welders, they sent me up to Boston to go to welding school. I took many classes and many repetitive tests till I was finally a certified welder and could officially start my new job. Most mornings, I would walk to the door and open the old wooden door to the dark and dusty tool room. There I would collect all my supplies, and I made sure that my welding mask had a living spider which would detect any unsafe gases during any repair jobs. To this day, I would never kill a spider since it was my canary in a coal mine. At the moment that I was 300 feet up in the air working on a repair job, I realized that I was no longer afraid of heights and that my father's challenge got me ready for my career as a welder.
So I get to introduce, I love your name, Molly McCarthy. Molly came to Mrs. Chase's storytelling and folktale group this year for the first time, and she said she was a natural storyteller. And when I was introduced to her, I knew that that was true. We always look for those natural storytellers. Look, we all have to work hard. And Molly works hard too, but a lot of this comes naturally to her, and we are very pleased to have her in our group this year. So please come up and you can introduce your senior, and you are telling, the Little Red Boat. And Kathy Cooney.
So this is Kathy Cronine, and I'll be telling her story. $1,000 was gone to something that we could all enjoy. What was it? A little red boat. It was about 14.5 feet, and we all loved it and all the rides it had taken us on. But we would have to say our favorite part was when we got to take the boat out on an early morning ride with coffee in one hand and the steering wheel in the other as a salty zephyr blew through our hair. We then progressed to the ocean, where we shared a cottage with bunches of family. And as soon as we got there, Pat said, "I'm taking the boat out without the extra added weight." We all agreed and let him go, so we watched with smiles and waved. But as soon as he got out there, we heard a thud, thud, thud. And the boat had stopped. And in the corner of my eye, I caught a glimpse of him grabbing the seats. I yelled up to him, "What are you doing?" He yelled back, "I forgot the spare oars." And then he yanked the seats right out of the boat. And all I could think at that very moment was there's a big guy in a little boat yanking the seats just like a walrus on a skateboard. After that, you think things couldn't get worse, but they did. We turned around to see the repairman coming to check on the boat. Yikes. After a few days, it was time to pack up our stuff and go, and all we had to do left was grab the boat. Easier said than done. Pat and David, my brother-in-law, took a skiff to go get the boat, but to our surprise, the skiff started to take on water, and then it flipped over. And a few moments later, Pat's head started to pop up, but no David. But David's head popped up, and we were all fine. We all love the little red boat, and I hope to start a line of boats for the next generation.
So our next storyteller is Kaya Rigo. Kaya is with me. Kaya, it's just 4 or 3 for you? 4. So she's been here all along. Andrea and I, are we doing this 3 years, 4 years? It's actually 4 years. We finally figured it out. So, and Winston has been with us as well. And he has fabulous stories. He always comes up with these incredible tales. He's lived an amazing life from a farm to teaching in, one-room schoolhouses. And so we're always excited to hear what he comes up with next. Kaya always brings her warm smile and personality, and this is the first year she's been paired with Winston, and I think she's done a wonderful job with his story. She is taking us to a small farm in New Hampshire where a young boy learns not only how to milk cows for the first time, but earns new respect for his father. Please welcome Kaya Rigo sharing Wilson's story of milking cows.
So this is Winston Lyford, and I'll be telling a story. Thank you. Okay, well. Come, boss. Where are they? They're usually at the gate waiting to be milked. Oh, they're probably at the pasture. I quickly ran home to grab a bucket of grain and then ran over to the pasture to go round them up. It should be easy. If I get one to come, the rest will follow. I slugged my way through the damp swamp. Mud was sticking to my boots. My feet kept sliding in and out of them, forming a small pool of guck. Finally, I found them on the far side of the pasture. There she was, Dusty, standing over her newborn baby. I slowly approached her and offered her a handful of grain. She willingly took it and followed me back to the barn, and so did the other cows. Dad met me at the door wearing his blue overalls and his big mucking boots. "Get the cows some grain," he said. "That will keep them preoccupied while we milk them, especially you being a new milker to them." In a matter of time, I had the bucket in hand, and suddenly a thought popped into my head. How does Dad do it alone? Can you imagine him milking all 20 cows 2 times a day all by himself? Before I could finish my thought, Dad started bombarding me with orders. Go get some sawdust and put it under each cow to clean out their spaces. Then, once you're done with that, go get a shovel and shovel out all the manure from underneath the cows and put it into the gutters. Then, finally, once you're done with that, go get me a big bucket of hot soapy water. Chore after chore I finally finished, and Dad was showing me how to clean the udder and the 4 teats. Surprisingly, it was really easy, but next comes the big test, the actual milking part. I sat down on my three-legged stool and put it up against the back leg of the cow near her stomach. I wrapped my pointer finger around the highest part of the teat and then squeezed it in a round finger motion until a small stream of milk poured into the bottom of the bucket. I continued this motion with all four of my fingers now until finally the bucket was completely filled. Okay, Dad said, you're on your own. One by one, we finished milking all 20 cows, but there were still chores to be done, such as bringing all of the cows to the watering tank and cleaning out their spaces again once more with sawdust. Finally, we finished all of the chores, and luckily there was a nice dinner waiting for me, which is even better growing up on a farm. In 1938, our barn was destroyed by fire, and so was the cows. Dad managed to rebuild the barn, but not the cattle and the business that he was hoping to start. I never appreciated how much Dad had worked for the family until the day that I started milking cows.
Our next storyteller is new to us this year, and he is a fourth grader from Grays. And in the folktale and fairy tale group that Mrs. Chase has, he was outstanding. And he is also another natural storyteller. And what I love about Alex is he has a wicked sense of humor. He's very dry and very witty. Also, he is an artist. I kept bugging him. He said, I draw. And I said, well, bring in some of your drawings. Finally, he did. And they were amazing, such detail. Good job. I'm going to invite him up. And this is Alex Goldsmith, and we're going to invite his senior up, and I'll let you introduce him. This might be a better one for you.
Hi, this is William Bell, and I'll be telling his story. Before every family member had an iPhone or every room had a television, the main source of entertainment was the radio. Everyone would gather around to listen. My family wasn't considered wealthy, although we were one of the few families to own a television. My dad worked at a steel mill and got it for a very low price. My gang members and I would come over to watch the shows. There were many we liked to watch, but our favorite was The Lone Ranger. We'd get our cowboy hats on, silver bullet rings, and cap pistols firing as we watched The Lone Ranger on his horse Silver. My mom baked cookies as a snack. The aroma on those days prompted even more kids to come over. One day, I heard a knock on the door and opened it, and to my surprise, there was a little boy, about 3 years younger than me, asking to watch the television, full cowboy gear. The most surprising thing was he was white. At this time, there was segregation between both black and white people. We went to school together, but after that, we did our normal routines. My gang members and I lived on buildings 32 to 35, and this boy lived on building 5. I didn't know what to say. I was stunned. Thankfully, my mother was there and graciously welcomed him in. So I went back to the TV, Saving the West with the Lone Ranger. Throughout time, he became one of the gang members, and he was short but athletic, so when we were picking sports teams, he would be there, like basketball, baseball, or football, sometimes to lend us some equipment. We gave him the nickname Shorty Mac because his name was Jimmy McKenzie. One thing Shorty Mac taught us was do not be afraid to lose or be rejected. It might turn out all right in the end.
Our next storyteller is always a delight to have in this program, whether it was in storytelling or now. And I love that she keeps coming back because I would miss her greatly if she wasn't here. She exudes a quiet confidence on stage, and she always takes great responsibility for whatever story she is choosing. This year, she is paired with Shirley Chase, my mother-in-law, so I get to say she's my favorite. And she is telling the story of a child's fascination that grew into a lifelong passion. Please welcome Lindsay Oliver.
Thank you.
Good luck.
I have rescued them from many unsavory circumstances. Whenever I leave home, I almost always have one with me. I laugh with them. I cry with them. They have been my friends for many, many years. What are they? They're books. My love of books began with newspapers. When I was around 7 or 8 years old, I lived with my grandfather, and we were subscribed to the local newspaper. Every morning, I would hear the loud, solid thud of the newspaper hitting the hollow porch, and I would race outside, grab it, sweep over the comic section, and then move on to the adult story. Being so curious and young at that time, I was very interested about what I was reading. "What's this word?" I would ask, and "what does it mean?" I loved the adult story. I think it was the suspense of waiting for a new day to see what would happen next that really drew me in. Did I comprehend what I was reading? Probably not, but it didn't matter. Those newspapers with the comics and the adult story planted the seed that would lead to my love of reading for many, many years. One day, I made the move from my grandfather's house to my mother's house. At my mother's house, we couldn't afford to subscribe to the local newspaper, which caused my love of reading to die down for around 6 years. Then, when I was 14 years old, we moved from Fairhaven to Freetown. In Freetown, there was nothing. No sidewalks, no public transportation, no social events, and worst of all, no friends. I was lonely, bored, and had nothing leisurely to do. One day, I was cleaning out my closet when I found my subscription to the Book of the Month Club, which my uncle had given me. As soon as I saw it, I scanned it and began reading. When I was reading, I was in a whole other world, and all that I had to do could be left for another day. In June of 1946, I was a 17-year-old senior and only a few months away from my graduation. I was on my 40-minute bus ride to school, and, of course, I had a book with me. The book I was reading during that time would be considered a bit spicy, but in today's terms, it's pretty mild. For whatever reason, the section in the book I was reading really struck my funny bone, and I started to laugh. There was a girl on the seat in front of me, and she turned around. "What are you laughing at?" I handed her the book, and she read it, and she laughed as well. Apparently, she told her mother about what she'd read, and her mother immediately called the principal and complained. The next day at school, I found myself being asked to go down to the office. What for, I wondered as I went on my way. The principal was a short, bald man with glasses. He glared at me when I walked in. "Sit down," he commanded. I sat down. He crossed his arms. "It is immoral and against the rules to bring a dirty book to school. And even worse, you exposed another student to it. If I catch you doing this again, I will suspend you." I shrunk in my seat. "You're dismissed." "Thank you, sir," I managed to mumble as I ran out of the room. I never brought another novel to school again. Throughout my life, reading and books, they've always been my companions. When I'm reading, I'm in a whole other world with new adventures and new people. And if someone wants to talk to me while I'm reading, they have to touch me or yell my name to get my attention, to which I usually reply with, "What?" in an annoyed tone. I also use reading as my sleeping pill. When I grab my book off the nightstand and begin to read, I slowly slip and fall asleep. And all of my worries of the day take a back seat. Unless it's a page turner. In that case, I must know what happens next. When my eyes finally stay open no more, I slip the book underneath my pillow. Good night, all. Happy dreams.
Our next two storytellers, they were all set, have been with us for 4 years. Boston Paquette and Austin Pelletier. Did I get that? I always mess them up. They have been telling tandem since day one. They've told individually, but everybody loves to hear them tell together because they are very amusing. And they have worked out the rhythm so well that it does seem like one person. You have to kind of take a second look. Let's invite them up, and they can introduce their senior. And this story is called The Thanksgiving Surprise.
Pat Green will be telling his story.
Hi, my name's Boston Paquette,
My name's Austin Pelletier.
and we'll be telling you the Thanksgiving surprise.
Since the dawn of time when dinosaurs still roamed the earth in 1962, I was a young boy. And it was also November, and the day was the 21st. It was the most magical day of the year because it was a day where I get to eat whatever I want and no one could judge me for it. Thanksgiving.
That morning, I woke up and saw my brother and sisters watching the Macy's Day Parade, which, if you ask me, is the second best part of Thanksgiving. Periodically, one of my sisters would be called into the kitchen by the Queen, or Mom, as she likes us to call her, to get her a pot or a pan and place it here or there. But not me and my brother. We stood our ground for hours in front of that TV. Until, of course, I heard my mom say, "It's ready!" And then we all piled into the kitchen, said grace, and then it was off to the races.
Mashed potatoes, slightly burnt turkey, and of course a couple ring-dings. I was all shoving it into my mouth at once. My mom, on the other hand, wasn't too happy about it.
Pat, if you keep eating like that, you'll explode!
Of course I wasn't going to listen to her. It was Thanksgiving, the day where I get to eat whatever I want and no one could judge me for it. I should have listened to her, though.
Because the next morning, I was throwing up everywhere. And my poor mom had to stay with me all day until she finally gave in and brought me to Dr. James, where I couldn't even get up onto the exam table without my mom having to lift me up. Then Dr. James came in and she explained my situation, and he said, "Let's take a look." Okay. Pushing down on my abdomen, and after a slightly girly scream by me, he said I have something called appendicitis.
So, I didn't know what that meant, but it was another bumpy ride to the hospital. And of course, as soon as I got there, all these nurses were running around, these doctors were going everywhere. I didn't know what they were doing. But they lifted me up onto a gurney, and they pushed me into the operating table, where I blacked out.
And the next morning, I woke up, and the doctors must have done something right, because I didn't have the bad pain here, but I did have this really weird, tight thing wrapped around my stomach. My mom later told me that my appendix, whatever that was, ruptured, I guess, which means explode, which is kind of cool, on the exam table. So they had to put these drains in, which was pretty nasty, but I got over it pretty quick.
The next day, a couple of nurses came into my room and said, "Hey, you gotta take a walk down the hallway." I didn't want to get out of bed because I hadn't used my legs in like a billion years. But they insisted, so I got out of bed.
And the second I got up, I fell flat on my face, which I gotta say was pretty embarrassing because the nurses were kind of cute. But my determination to impress the nurses got me back up, which I kept falling, and it's a whole big thing. But I finally did get down to the hallway and back into my bed. The next couple of weeks were kind of boring, but my friends and family did come. Even Father Ed from the church came, which when I first saw him, I thought it was all over. But he just came to give me an etch-a-sketch and see how I was doing.
I mean, my trip to the hospital wasn't all that bad. When I got home and I had to go back to school, I was so popular. Kids even sat with me at lunch. That's a first. Also, did I mention I got to ride the elevator up and down?
But as I got better, my popularity slowly declined. But it wasn't all so bad because summer baseball was starting, which meant I was back on the team, and even my favorite summer camp was about to start. But that's a story for another day.
We always tell the students, you know, you can take some literary license with the story, and boy, do they take some literary license. We hear things. It's always wonderful of Andrea and I because, you know, of course we're working with them. We're hearing the stories from the first time they start working with them and what they develop into. But even tonight, we hear things that we haven't heard before, right? We
we
love
knew.
that spontaneity that we have. They have, actually.
Well, one of my favorite things is watching Pat
Yes.
listen to the story.
And for instance, some of you have been with us over the 4 years. One, Pat's story, I think it was Eli's Deli story, was that your first year or your second year? First year had ring dings in it, and they bring it back every single year. There were no ring dings at Thanksgiving dinner, but they put them there. So that was great. Andrea and I, what we would like to do now is, as you saw when you came in, we have some refreshments for you. Please avail yourself of those. Stay around because what we're going to do is, while you're mingling, we're going to set up here, and we're going to do a little Q&A with the seniors and the students, and you can think of any questions you might like to ask as well. And then we're going to have an awards ceremony. But before we break, I know we have a few people to thank for tonight.
We do. We would like to thank you for coming. Thank you. And we'd like to thank the Freetown Cultural Council for sponsoring the program. Thanks to the Freetown Historical Society. They had us last week.
We have, I'm throwing her off, it's my shorthand. We have a form, if anyone is interested in, you know, learning about this for next year. It doesn't commit you to say, yes, I'm going to do it. But if you want to know when we begin this process again next year, and we'll reach out to you. We put PR in the newsletters and the COAs for Freetown Lakeville. But sometimes we get the best people who just happen to wander in, like William Bell, who's from Taunton, and he happened to
We didn't let
stop.
go.
Yeah, we haven't let go of him. Yeah, he wandered into the COA in Lakeville when we were doing the program. We're like, oh, yes, 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 please come and join us. So if you are interested in information, we have something for you to sign up.
We should thank the cable.
Oh, absolutely. Lake Cam is always wonderful. Thank you so much for filming. Parents, when everything is up and done, they will let me know, and I will send you the link, and you can share it far and wide with your friends and family and be so proud of these students. So
And
please.
the library.
Oh, yes, and the Lakeville Library. We can't forget the
We
Lakeville
wouldn't
Library.
be here without the library.
Jamie, the head librarian, is wonderful. She puts out the information in her newsletter as well and offers us this beautiful Great Ponds room. So please do stick around, enjoy yourself, and then we'll let you know in about 10 minutes. Come back and let's do some awards and let's do some Q&A, okay? Thank you.
Please eat.
Yes, eat.
We have to take it home, you eat.
So we have some questions we want to ask the children, but also, and the seniors, but also, if you have some questions too for them about the process or the story or their experience, anything like that. So first, we're going to start with the seniors, okay? Can you tell us, who would like to tell us? I'll let you raise your hand, okay? Just like the days of old when you were in school. Do you think this program is important, and why? Why do you think it's important? If you do. Who would, all right. William. There we go.
Good. Yes, I think the program is very important because you accomplish what your objective is, to bridge the gap between the young people and the seniors. And me personally, I enjoy it because it helps me to remember things long forgotten. And sometimes, being a weeper that I am, it brings tears to my eyes, you know. Somehow or other, I've blacked out all the bad things, and it's just the good things that I remember. But, and it's a great opportunity for the kids and to get to, as was mentioned earlier, to realize that we seniors were once children as well.
Thank you, William. Thank you very much. Any of the students like to share how they feel about this program? Are there new students, students that have been here for a while? Why do you keep coming back?
I think it's because it was a different time, so they had a lot more completely different things that say, for example, Pat, say a lot of crazy things happened to him when he was like 7 compared to like when we're 7, like when we are 7 in this time, like it's completely different. Like culture's different, society's different, so it ends up being completely different to what we would have. So it's fun to see how different like life is.
Oh, great, I like that. Thank you, Austin. Any other senior want to share their thoughts about the program?
This
New
senior
or
right
old?
here
Oh, do you want, okay, go ahead.
Okay. Kind of like the same thing Austin said, because I like to learn like how it was in 1962, and like how Pat lived his life compared to like how I did or how I am. Yeah.
Great. Thank you. These boys have been working with Pat for a number of years. They've developed quite the relationship. Pat. Oh, good. Okay, go ahead.
Just one commentary. Working with these two young men, when I wrote my first story for them, I used the word tenement. And one of them went to either Andrea or Karen and said, "What is this?" And she said, "It's a tenement." "What's a tenement?" "Well, it's a building where people live." And they grew up in a rural setting, whereas I had 36 families in the same building that I grew up in. It was like a small city of different ethnic groups. I mean, I lived on the top floor in the first apartment building I lived in. And going from the ground floor to the top floor, I smelled Italian food, I smelled Spanish food, I smelled how the Germans cook. It was quite different than how I was at that age compared to them. So it's like two cultures coming together and forming a marriage.
Ah, that's a nice way to put that. Thank you, Pat. Thank you. Okay, so I want to ask one of the students who wants to respond. What is your process? You get this story from someone you may have just met, and it's on paper, and you talk to them and you interview them. So then what is your process of taking that story from the page to bringing it to the stage? Yes, Lindsay.
So it's more than, like, as we're reminded a billion times, it's more than just like memorizing exactly what you see on the paper. It's about making it more of your own, and doing that is just sort of like, well, how would I look in this situation? What would I be smelling? What would I be tasting? Like, how could I describe what's around me? And is this really valuable to what I'm about to tell when I go up there in front of all these people? What can I do to make them understand and connect to it? What can I do to make them laugh in some cases? And it's just important to remember that we're not coming up here and reading a story and telling it. We're here to show an experience that has happened. And I think that's pretty valuable.
Seniors, what is the one thing you will take away from this experience? Oh, Kathy, okay.
I've been working here. I've done this for 3 years, and I was a teacher for over 30 years. And that part, since I retired, I miss having the pleasure of meeting the children every day or seeing them. But I have been lucky. You did a wonderful, wonderful job. And the ones I've worked with before did a fabulous job. And I think it's just so nice for us to have the honor, kind of what you just said, the honor of seeing something that was important to us said by wonderful people. And so I want to thank everyone that ever worked with me, because you've all been great. And I guess that's it. Thank you.
And we love that Pat and Kathy keep coming back. And when we finished our last class together and my mother-in-law was driving home with me, she said, well, I guess I have to start thinking about a story for next year. And I love that. I love that. So let me ask the audience. Audience, do you have any questions for the seniors or the students at all? Anything that pops into your mind? Yes. What is it? Do you want to come up to the microphone, or do you want to just tell me and I'll say it? What would you like to do? Do you want to wait, or do you want to come up? You want to wait? Okay. I'm dying to hear what your question is. I really am. Anybody?
I have a question.
Yes.
For the tandem tellers, what's your process, and how do you put it together? How do you decide who goes what? And I haven't heard from you two. I have heard from you two, so let's hear from Aurora and Katie.
It was kind of hard because we weren't sure, like, oh, who's going to get this or who's going to get that. And we didn't want to have, like, one person talk half and then the other. Or we kind of wanted to, like, split it up. That way we would go on and off. So it was kind of just like, oh, you get this one, you get this one. Yeah.
Katie, what about you?
Yeah, pretty much. Well,
She's usually not this quiet. Pretty much the same thing?
Yeah.
Okay, thank you, thank you. This is the first time they've told in tandem together, right? And they did a really good job. I was very surprised when they said they were going to do tandem together, and you both did wonderful. Really, really nice. So I guess one last question. What was it like playing games with the seniors so that you could get to know each other? Lexi, you're kind of smiling over there. What'd you get?
I loved playing the games. That was so much fun. I like playing the games with the seniors because it really helps us get to know them in a more fun way than just like go sit down and talk to them. It's more fun to be like, I really like the circle game where you'd talk about, we'd all be in a big circle and you'd step in if it applied to you. Like if you ever went to Disney, if you'd been on a boat before or something like that. I really liked that game. That was one of my favorites.
Great, great. Alex, you had your hand up. Did you want to say something about that? No? Okay. Well, we could sit here and ask questions and talk all night, but the clock is ticking, and I know the library closes at 8. So before we get kicked out, Andrea and I have some awards for both the seniors and the students. And I'll just let you know what whoops, hold on. You're a little slippery. I put them in these nice little things so they don't get crushed. The children receive a Bridge Award, and it reads, for your extraordinary work in bridging the generations, preserving their stories, and giving them voice. And the seniors receive a Best Mentor Award, and it states, with deep appreciation for sharing your personal stories, wisdom, and mentoring the next generation. So we are going to ask the students to give the seniors their awards. Hold on. Okay, so, oops, here I go. Lexi, would you come over, please? Present that to Gert, please. Katie and Aurora. Oops, wait a minute, give it the wrong one, darling. Hold on. Hold on, darling. Sorry, gave it the wrong one. Let's see, we have Kaya. Would you please come and give this to Winston? Would you please give this to William? now going to present them to the children. So I would like Alexandra to come up, please.